Now, earlier this hour, we told you about Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer's comment to Mexico that President Trump was bluffing about imposing tariffs on that country. Now, not only did that spark an angry response from President Trump, but it also has some conservative critics blasting Schumer for publicly undermining the president's strategy. And there is a similar theme playing out on another issue. Even as the Trump team is hoping to create a unified front against the Iranian regime, there continues to be evidence that some Congressional Democrats and former Obama administration officials are counseling the Iranian government and even coaching them on how to fend off Trump administration pressure. The latest report on this trend comes from the Daily Beast. In an article published this week, the Daily Beast says that former Obama State Department and White House aides have been counseling the Iranians to sit tight and wait out the Trump administration. Now, this tactic reportedly began just after President Trump was elected in November 2016. The Trump administration has made it clear that the aim of the maximum pressure on Tehran is to get the regime back to the negotiating table. The advice to not yield is being criticized by pro-democracy and Iranian regime change advocates as a barrier to bringing freedom to the Iranian people and as potentially illegal. But that's not all. California Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein was first seen making a phone call to Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif last month. And then she had dinner with him a few days later. Feinstein hasn't denied making the call, and her office says it did inform the State Department about that dinner. Not long after that meeting, Feinstein accused the Trump administration of provoking war and praised Zarif as a reasonable man.
We should not provoke a conflict. I think that's what's happening. I think we ought to find a way to sit down and have a decent conversation. I think that's possible. I happen to know the foreign minister of Iran, know him quite well. He's a very reasonable man and would not be encouraging this kind of activity on the part of his country. I deeply believe that.
But perhaps the best-known case of alleged meddling in the Trump strategy with Iran came from former Secretary of State John Kerry. Kerry has held multiple talks with the Iranian regime since President Trump was elected. Last month, President Trump blasted Kerry for those meetings and suggested that he should be prosecuted for violating the Logan Act. The act, established in 1799, makes it a felony for individuals who are not authorized by the U.S. government to negotiate with foreign governments which have disputes with the U.S. Now, to date, there have been indictments, but no one has actually been convicted of violating the Logan Act. And then there is one more aspect of the story that cannot be ignored. And it may explain why so many former Obama administration officials are so intent on counseling the Iranian regime and are so committed to the 2015 Iran deal. The deal may have come with the extra cost of letting terrorist group Hezbollah get away with drug smuggling, money laundering, and terrorism. It was just over 2 years ago that Politico published a meticulously sourced investigative piece detailing how the Obama administration secretly undermined Project Cassandra. That project was an elaborate federal probe into international drug smuggling, money laundering, and terrorism by Hezbollah, which is, of course, an Iranian proxy. The Obama administration wanted the Iran deal so badly that it didn't want anything to upset Tehran and tossed a string of roadblocks holding back the project. As Politico sources made very clear, a decision was made at the highest levels of the Obama administration to not rock the boat on the Iran deal. All right, joining me now to explore this more is Gregg. Gregg is the director of the Middle East Forum, and Spencer Critchley. Spencer is a Democratic strategist, managing partner of Boots Road Group Communications, and Spencer is also a former communications advisor to the Obama campaign in 2008 and 2012. And you can also catch him as the host of Dastardly Cleverness in the Service of Good podcast. All right, gentlemen, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
All right, Gregg, let's start with you. Do you think that former Obama officials are undermining U.S. foreign policy and national security with this advice that they're reportedly giving to Tehran?
I remember former House Minority Leader and now Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, complaining about meetings that were taking place between Mike Flynn, the former Trump administration National Security Advisor, and calling for him to be prosecuted under the Logan Act for speaking with Russian officials before the inauguration of Donald Trump at the beginning of 2017. Now, I don't approve of what Mike Flynn did, but even more so, I don't approve of former Obama administration officials trying to undermine American foreign policy goals. Just like Democrats have complained about Republicans doing this, we now see a Republican administration being undermined by Democrats. And at the same time, both parties cannot interfere with American foreign policy, not just according to federal law, but according to what's necessary for American national security goals. If the Iranians get mixed messages from a former Secretary of State, members of Congress, former national security officials of the immediate previous administration, then what this will do is mix the messages that are coming out of Washington, D.C. and the White House. If there are two American foreign policies, the risk that it poses to American foreign policy without having all of that in the unitary nature of the executive branch could make us less safe and could lead us closer to conflict with Iran rather than having a policy which brings them back to the negotiating table and at the same time mitigates any potential dangers according to their nuclear project, a project that was not saved by the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, but actually was just delayed to 10 years from the time of its signing.
Right. Look, Spencer, the Trump administration has made it clear it's trying to use sanctions to force Tehran back to the table to renegotiate the deal and get a deal that does prevent Iran from getting nuclear weapons, not just delay it, and does stop its sponsor of terrorist proxies. So this advice reportedly given by former Obama officials to just hang tight and try to wait out Trump, it undermines the Trump administration's initiatives and entire strategy. Do you, as a Democrat, support that?
I want to say, first of all, just quickly that what the Trump administration is trying to do is get back to where we were before they dismantled the Iranian nuclear
That is
deal
not
and
accurate. What the Trump administration, Spencer, what the Trump administration is trying to do, Spencer, what the Trump administration is trying to do is not get back to where we were. They're trying to come up with a deal that they say will prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon and to eliminate many of the flaws in the deal, like the sunset clause, and also curb Iran's behavior in the region and stop it for sponsoring terrorist proxies. So they're not trying to get back to where we were. Do you support this?
No, well, they need to get back to where we were in order to make any progress, because they've put us way behind where we were. But I know that what you want to talk about is whether people who are not part of the administration should be negotiating on behalf of the administration. And I agree with Gregg's analysis. That shouldn't happen whether it's Republicans doing it or whether it's Democrats doing it. It's clear that that's what Michael Flynn was doing, and I appreciate that Gregg recognizes there was a big problem with that. He was explicitly promising to the Russians that they could ignore the Obama administration's sanctions and just wait for the Trump administration, and you absolutely should not do that. And of course, the Trump administration has been notoriously lenient on Russia ever since. Now, in terms of whether Obama figures or former Obama administration figures are doing it,
Spencer, but we don't know that the Trump administration having imposed
according to the president,
has been lenient. He wants better relations, but he hasn't been lenient on Russia. Not if you look at the sanctions
according to the president,
on the
the attack by. According to the president, the attack by Russia on the United States is a hoax.
Let's stick to this Iran deal, because you've got, look, I understand that Democrats and Republicans can disagree on domestic issues. That's fair. That's valid. But internal policies is one thing. I mean, isn't this interference and cooperation with the top state sponsor of terrorism dangerous, dare I say, even treasonous? I mean, shouldn't there be a united front against a clear enemy of the United States? And this enemy predates any administration of the last 40 years.
I really don't think it's at all clear that that's happening, and we don't know from this recent reporting or from the two-year-old story from Politico that you cited that anything like this is going on. Contacts between members of former administrations and leaders from around the country are so routine they happen daily. You know, you need only think about people like Henry Kissinger or former British Prime Minister Tony Blair. The list goes on and on. They're constantly talking with leaders of other countries. Where the demarcation line needs to be is if they claim to be negotiating on behalf of their government as opposed to just offering their opinions.
So you're okay with giving, you're okay with them being given
Spencer,
advice?
that's incorrect according to the Logan Act. That's not what the Logan Act says. If an American citizen goes and discusses foreign policy even if he does not represent himself as a member of the administration, but urges that country to effectuate policy which is counterintuitive to the policy of the White House, then he is in violation of the Logan Act. Just because it has not been prosecuted in 150 years does not mean that these individuals are against the spirit or the letter of the law. Democrats who acknowledged to Aaron Banco in her May 31st Daily Beast article that they are doing this engagement in order to thwart this administration's policy towards Iran are undermining American national security and violating federal law. You acknowledged that what Mike Flynn did was incorrect. What these Democrats are doing is incorrect, too.
Greg, we're running out of time. Spencer, you got 30 seconds or so. I just want to give you the final word on this.
Sure. Again, I really don't think it's at all clear that what was going on in these conversations, and they clearly deny it in the article. I also want to invite people to look up the 2-year-old Politico story about the supposed slow walking of action against Hezbollah. There's a reason that story died, and there's a reason you can only find it on right-wing websites to this day.
Well, that's not the only way you find
just
it.
Look up the response. Look up all the response from the mainstream media and people who actually check these things out. And I have experience with this in media. This is why stories die. They don't check out
Spencer,
the sources.
We're out of time. We appreciate
seem to have had an axe to grind, and there were very
Greg,
few of them.
Thank you. We'll be right back.